Judge Arthur Engoron has imposed a penalty of more than $350 million against both the former president as well as his adult sons and his corporation. That case brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James. The president has been ordered now to pay more than $354 million in damages.
This is absolutely devastating for Donald Trump. And I mean that in every possible way, because what just happened in a New York courtroom isn't just another legal setback. It isn't just another ruling Trump can appeal and forget about. This is a judge looking at years of evidence, looking at financial statements and witness testimony and documents that can't be explained away, and delivering a verdict so crushing that it threatens to destroy everything Trump has built. $355 million. That's what Trump personally owes, not his company, not some insurance policy. Trump. And that's just the beginning of what this ruling does to him. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, please subscribe, because you might think you are, but aren't. Your subscription actually matters here. That's why we built John Brown Show, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. So Judge Arthur Engoron just dropped a ruling that Trump has been dreading for months. The New York civil fraud case, the one where Attorney General Letitia James accused Trump of systematically lying about property values to get better loans and insurance rates. And Engoron didn't just find Trump guilty, he eviscerated him, used language in the official ruling that judges almost never use, said Trump's conduct shocks the conscience. Those are the actual words in a legal document. Fraud that shocks the conscience. Share this video with everyone you know, because think about what a judge has to see to write something like that. Think about how bad the evidence has to be for a judge to say your behavior shocks the conscience. That's not legal boilerplate. That's a judge so disgusted by what he found that he put his personal revulsion into the official ruling. And then he backed up that language with penalties designed to dismantle Trump's entire business empire. $355 million. Trump has to pay it personally. His sons Eric and Don Jr. each owe over $4 million. Alan Weisselberg, the Trump Organization CFO who helped cook the books, owes $1 million. This is comprehensive financial destruction targeting everyone who participated in the fraud. And Trump has 30 days to come up with the money. 30 days to find $355 million while fighting appeals and dealing with other legal cases and trying to serve as president. Make sure you're subscribed to John Brown Show, because here's where it gets even worse for Trump. The money is devastating enough. But what Judge Engoron did beyond the financial penalties is what really destroys Trump's business. He banned Trump from conducting business in New York for 3 years. Read that again. Donald Trump, the guy whose entire identity is built around New York real estate, cannot do business in New York for 3 years. That's not a fine you pay and move on. That's exile from your home market. Trump Tower sits in New York. The Trump Organization is headquartered in New York. Some of his most valuable properties operate in New York. And for 3 years, Trump personally cannot conduct business there. Can't sign deals. Can't negotiate contracts. Can't do the things that define his entire career. He's locked out of his own business in his own city. And his sons got hit too. Eric and Don Jr. are banned from serving as officers or directors of any New York corporation for 2 years. So Trump can't even use his kids to run things while he's sidelined. The whole family operation gets disrupted, gets put under restrictions that make operating the Trump Organization almost impossible. Everything they've built together gets torn apart by court order. Think about what that means practically. Trump wakes up tomorrow still owing $355 million, still banned from New York business, still facing restrictions that prevent him from operating the way he always has. And there's more. Because Judge Engoron imposed something Trump probably hates even more than the money or the bans: independent monitoring. The Trump Organization now operates under court supervision, compliance monitors with full access to everything. Every financial statement, every transaction, every business decision. Nothing happens without outside eyes watching and documenting and reporting back to the judge. Trump spent his entire career operating in secrecy, making aggressive valuations, pushing boundaries without oversight, and now he's got monitors he can't fire watching everything he does. Share this with everyone, because Engoron explained exactly why these penalties were necessary. He wrote in the ruling that Trump engaged in persistent fraud over many years, not one mistake. not a misunderstanding about property values. Systematic, ongoing, deliberate fraud. Trump inflated the value of Mar-a-Lago, claimed his penthouse apartment was 3 times bigger than it actually is, exaggerated what his golf courses were worth, made up numbers that had no relationship to reality, and he did this repeatedly on financial statements given to banks and insurers. The discrepancies weren't minor, they were massive. Trump would claim a property was worth hundreds of millions when it was actually worth a fraction of that. The lies were so big, so obvious, so systematic that the judge said they shocked the conscience. That's how bad it was. And Engoron found that Trump showed complete lack of contrition, never admitted wrongdoing, never apologized, never took responsibility, just kept insisting he did nothing wrong even when confronted with overwhelming evidence of fraud. So the judge concluded Trump will likely continue this behavior without strict oversight. That's why the monitoring got imposed, because the court decided Trump cannot be trusted to operate honestly without someone watching him constantly. That's humiliating, that's constraining, that's everything Trump hates about government interference in his business. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because now, let's talk about what this ruling actually does to Trump in practical terms. First, the immediate financial crisis. $355 million due in 30 days. Trump has to find that money, has to liquidate assets or get loans or restructure his entire financial situation. And he has to do it while banned from New York business and operating under court supervision. The normal financial tools he'd use aren't available anymore. Trump's always operated by borrowing against his properties, using one asset to leverage another, moving money around in ways that maximize his options. But monitors are watching now. Banks see a fraud judgment against him. New York operations are restricted. The flexibility he relied on is gone. So coming up with $355 million becomes exponentially harder than it would normally be for someone with substantial assets. And while Trump is scrambling to pay that judgment, the restrictions are destroying his ability to generate revenue. Can't do New York business for 3 years, can't operate freely with monitors watching, can't make the aggressive deals that defined his career. Revenue gets constrained exactly when he needs it most. The financial vice tightens from multiple directions simultaneously. Think about what this does to Trump's reputation. His entire political brand is built on being a successful businessman. The guy who wrote Art of the Deal, the billionaire who knows how to make money, the person voters trusted to run the country like a business. But a judge just ruled that his business success was built on fraud, that he lied systematically to banks and insurers, that his financial statements couldn't be trusted, that finding that shocks the conscience, that destroys the image Trump spent decades building, makes voters question whether his wealth is even real or just built on lies, makes business partners reconsider whether they want to be associated with someone a judge found committed fraud, makes banks think twice about lending to someone whose financial statements were found to be fraudulent. The reputational damage compounds the financial damage in ways that threaten the entire empire. And Trump tried every defense, claimed the case was political persecution, attacked Judge Engoron as biased, said property valuations are subjective, argued that banks should have done their own due diligence, insisted no one lost money so there's no fraud. None of it worked. Engoron rejected every argument, found the fraud was persistent and shocking, imposed penalties designed to punish past conduct and prevent future fraud. The judge said fraud is fraud regardless of whether victims suffered losses. The illegality is in the lying, not just in the consequences. Trump's argument that banks should have caught his lies doesn't excuse him from lying. And claiming property valuations are subjective doesn't work when you're saying a penthouse is 3 times bigger than it actually is. That's not subjective valuation. That's lying about objective facts. Engoron also made credibility findings against Trump personally. Said his testimony wasn't believable, that his explanations contradicted the evidence, that the pattern of dishonesty was clear and documented. When a judge makes those kinds of findings, it destroys your ability to defend yourself in future cases. Other judges see those credibility determinations. Other courts consider them. Your reputation as a dishonest witness follows you into every legal battle going forward. Make sure you're subscribed because now here's where it gets really interesting. Trump is appealing this ruling. Of course he is. He appeals everything, but appeals take time and cost money. And while the appeal proceeds, the judgment stands. Trump still owes $355 million. The business bans still apply. The monitors still watch his every move. Appealing doesn't pause the consequences. It just delays final resolution, while Trump operates under these devastating restrictions. And the judgment earns interest while Trump appeals. So the longer this drags out, the more he owes. The debt grows while his ability to pay shrinks. That's a financial death spiral. Trump facing mounting obligations while his revenue gets constrained and his options get limited. Eventually, something has to break. Either he pays and strains his finances catastrophically, or he doesn't pay and faces contempt charges and additional penalties. Think about what happens if Trump violates the court orders, if he tries to do business in New York despite the ban, if he interferes with the monitors, if he provides false information to the court. Those violations are contempt, could result in jail time, could result in even bigger penalties. Trump is operating in an environment where one wrong move creates additional legal jeopardy on top of everything he's already facing. His sons are in the same position, banned from corporate leadership for 2 years, personally liable for millions in penalties. Their reputations tied to a company a judge found committed fraud that shocks the conscience. Eric and Don Jr. built their careers around the Trump Organization. And now that organization is under court supervision with their father banned from New York business and monitors watching everything. Their professional futures are as damaged as their fathers. Share this with everyone because Alan Weisselberg's situation shows what happens when you participate in Trump's schemes. Weisselberg was the CFO, intimately involved in creating the fraudulent financial statements, and now he owes $1 million. His career in legitimate business is over. No company wants a CFO who was central to fraud that shocked a judge's conscience. His professional reputation is destroyed beyond repair. That sends a message to everyone else in the Trump Organization about the consequences of going along with fraud. The compliance monitoring includes regular reports to the court. Those reports become public record, so Trump's business operations get exposed in ways they never were before. Deals he'd prefer to keep private get documented in court filings. Financial arrangements get scrutinized and reported publicly. The secrecy Trump relied on for decades gets stripped away by court order. Everything becomes transparent whether he likes it or not. And this is just one case. Trump is facing criminal prosecutions, other civil judgments, ongoing investigations. Each one drains resources and attention. Each one creates additional legal fees and potential liabilities. The cumulative effect is pressure from multiple directions that no one can sustain indefinitely. Even someone with significant wealth eventually runs out of resources when they're being attacked on this many fronts simultaneously. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because Trump's political opponents now have perfect ammunition. They can cite a judge's ruling, can quote language about fraud shocking the conscience, can point to $355 million in penalties as documented proof Trump is a fraud, can show the business bans as evidence he can't be trusted to operate honestly. All of that is in official court records that can't be dismissed as partisan attacks or fake news. Democrats running against Trump or his allies can say a judge found he committed persistent fraud, that his financial statements were lies, that his business success was built on deception. That's devastating campaign material because it's all backed by judicial findings after a full trial with evidence and testimony. It's not opinion, it's documented fact established in court. Think about what this does to Trump psychologically. His entire self-image is built around being a successful businessman, someone who makes great deals, someone who builds things and creates value. But a judge just ruled that it was all fraud, that the success was built on lies, that the empire was constructed on false financial statements. That attacks the core of who Trump thinks he is, destroys the narrative he's told himself for decades. And Trump can't escape this by attacking the judge or the attorney general. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial statements Trump signed, testimony from witnesses including people who worked for him, documents showing the discrepancies between claimed values and actual values. The fraud is mathematical. You can't spin math, You can't claim partisan bias when the numbers prove you lied. Share this video because the 3-year business ban covers Trump's time as president. He's serving as president while banned from doing business in his home state. That's unprecedented, creates conflicts and complications nobody has figured out how to handle. How does Trump manage a business empire he's banned from operating? How does he avoid violating court orders while also overseeing his company? The practical logistics are nightmare scenarios. The monitoring extends years into the future. This isn't a one-time penalty Trump pays and moves on. This is ongoing court supervision that continues regardless of what else happens politically. Even if Trump serves his full term, the monitors are still there watching his business. The oversight doesn't end until judges decide the Trump organization can be trusted to operate honestly without supervision. That could be years or even decades depending on how Trump behaves. And every court filing, every monitor report, every development in this case generates new headlines, keeps the fraud findings in the news, reminds voters that a judge found Trump's conduct shocking, makes it impossible for Trump to move past this or change the subject. The case follows him everywhere, defines how people see him, undermines everything he tries to accomplish politically. Make sure you're subscribed because this ruling represents what accountability looks like when it finally catches up with someone who's avoided it for decades. Trump spent his career pushing boundaries, making aggressive claims about property values, operating in gray areas where the line between salesmanship and fraud gets blurry, but eventually he crossed lines that were clearly illegal. Eventually, someone investigated thoroughly enough to document the pattern. Eventually, a judge looked at the evidence and delivered a ruling that imposes real consequences. $355 million, business bans for 3 years, court monitoring for years, credibility findings that destroy his reputation. That's comprehensive destruction of Trump's business empire delivered by a judge who found the fraud shocks the conscience. Trump can rage about it, can claim persecution, can attack everyone involved. But the ruling stands, the penalties apply, the restrictions constrain his every move. This is the blow Trump feared most because it hits him where he's most vulnerable. His finances, his business, his reputation as a successful dealmaker, all of it gets dismantled by a judicial ruling based on evidence he can't explain away. And unlike political battles where he can rally supporters and attack opponents, court rulings are final. Judges don't care about his poll numbers or his base. They care about evidence and law. And the evidence showed fraud that shocks the conscience. Stay tuned because this story is far from over. Trump will appeal, will fight, will try every tactic to reduce the penalties or delay enforcement. But the fundamental finding stands. A judge looked at Trump's business practices and ruled he committed persistent fraud. That finding follows Trump forever, defines his legacy, proves that beneath the gilded towers and the branding and the self-promotion, there was fraud that shocked a judge's conscience. And now Trump pays the price for decades of lies finally catching up with him.